say that I really am alarmed by the failure of public process and something that I just think is a disregard of the law in this instance that led to this commission. And that's a serious issue, and that's serious language to use, but I think it fits this circumstance. We've seen NRC Chairman Jasko order his commission to shut down review of the Yucca application, leading to further delays. And it's very, very troubling to me to see this very talented and dedicated commission really directed from the start not to consider Yucca, which I believe to be the law of the United States of America, and that you're not responsible for that. I want to make that very clear as to where responsibility lies for this. But we have spent over $12 billion in 30 years moving forward in Yucca, and now we're at this point where we have a commission that I likened as sort of the group that's scouting the best NBA since Representative Hamilton is one of our great all-star basketball teams. I'll just use that metaphor. It's kind of like they're asking you to scout for the NBA and told whatever you do, don't consider that Michael Jordan young guy. And I think that's the situation that we were in. And you just can't do a good scouting job and not take a look at that young number 23. And this really hits home in my state. And we're home to the Hanford site, 9 former nuclear reactors. We were a stalwart in the Cold War, and now we still have that residue in my home state and close to the Columbia River. 53 million gallons of radioactive and chemical waste in 177 underground tanks at one time. We've been preparing and planning for Yucca for disposal since 2002. I've got thousands of my state people getting this ready to ship to Yucca, and it's going to be all dressed up, no place to go. And I've been working on this since the mid-1980s to not see my state become a de facto interim storage in substandard conditions. So this is of great concern to me. And I'm really concerned that if we do require, quote, a consensus, it basically is going to require my state to become a de facto repository for these wastes through my grandchildren's, and I get a new one this week, I hope, her lifetime. And I think that's the route we're on if we don't follow the law. So I guess the first question I have, and I just want to make clear, does anything in this report suggest in any way that Yucca would not be suitable to consider for scientific reasons?
No.
No.
I appreciate that. And by the way, I want to appreciate your personal service. I think you've articulated the position of the commission well and the limitations of your decision. This is kind of a difficult situation for you, and you've been in difficult situations before. But I guess looking to the future, if we are unable to reach the consensus that you have suggested perhaps we should look for, does it effectively make the current situation in the places that now house the waste the de facto permanent storage sites, permanent in the foreseeable future? Isn't that a fair statement if you share the view that I have, that consensus is going to be harder to find than an obligation to follow the law, which we have in place? Doesn't it make these places de facto permanent sites?
We visited Hanford. Those people were very gracious to us, and we had a hearing there. And I think all of the frustrations which you have expressed came out to us very strongly. And I don't criticize them in the least for thinking that they could become a permanent site because they've had it so long, and the risks, as you said, to the Columbia River and elsewhere are real. The frustrations in our inability to resolve this problem are huge. There isn't any doubt about that. And there are a lot of people who have very, very legitimate complaints. We listened to miles and miles of testimony expressing the frustrations people have with the way the federal government has handled the waste problem. And that's one reason we recommend a new organization, because we think the DOE can't do it. It's lost credibility on it. So the frustrations are there. The question is, however, what do you do? How do you get out of the box? It is the law, you're correct, that Yucca Mountain is the repository. The only problem is we can't enforce the law. That has not been a solution. It may be the law, but we can't enforce it. Okay, is that a good thing? No, it's not a good thing. It's always good if you follow the law. But you can't. And you haven't been able to for 40 years. Now, you can sit around and hope that it's all going to be resolved if the next election breaks right. And that's been exactly the hope for 40 years, and it hadn't worked. Now, we got a problem. We got a problem in this country that is very, very difficult to solve. We don't know if we got the answers here. We think we've got a good approach. And we think it's the only path on the table, if you would, to get us out of the box. And if you stand around and insist on Yucca, 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 which people have been insisting on for a long, long time, but have not been able to pull it off, we think the result of that is an impasse, a failure to solve the problem. Where do you go? You can go for another 40 years and not solve the problem. We're trying to indicate a path forward. That's what we're trying to do.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the other member from the great state of Washington, Kathy McMorris Rogers, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I too just want to say thanks for your work and thanks for being here. Like so many, I've been in and out, and I kind of want to, coming from Washington State, where we pay close attention to Hanford, and the part of the report that really, suggests that a site like Hanford could become a de facto repository, I think is what raises the greatest concern. And I would like to start by just asking, what do you see as the future of Hanford then, and what role do you see Hanford playing moving forward?
Look, I think you've got to give those people at Hanford some hope. It's exactly as Mr. Inslee said. They are so frustrated now because no progress has been made on this. The problem's getting worse, and they have every right to be discouraged and frustrated and mad. What hope do we give them? The hope is that if you adopt our resolutions, they will have the hope, a real one, of establishing a consolidated storage entity within 10 or 15 years. That's a rough guess. Now, that's something they haven't had. And it gets them out of the feeling that they're going to be permanently dealing with this stuff. We think the process we have set forward gives them real hope, a genuine hope, which they don't have today under present law.
I guess what that approach ignores is that the dissent decree that has already been agreed upon with the federal government, and a lot of concerns that have been raised about the location of Hanford next to the Columbia River, and an agreement that was put in place that said we were going to move that waste off-site, and the importance of moving that waste off-site, and so that would continue to be the concern, and I'm not sure that the fears and the anger will go away by simply just saying, okay, in 15 years we're...
Well, you're exactly right about that. Those fears, you can't wave a magic wand here. You can't undo the sins of the past. They're done. They're in place. All you can try to do is correct the problem, and that's what we're trying to do. Now, if you got a solution, and I'm not pointing this to you directly, a better way to solve this problem, we're certainly open to it.
If the gentlelady would yield, I would suggest the solution would be for the administration to follow the law as written. That's, I mean, with due respect to my colleagues, we understand that there's a 1982 Waste Policy Act. We have 1987 amendments to that. We have votes. You want to talk about consent, Mr. Hamilton? Consent was decided here in Congress by numerous votes, whether that's the vote to fund the science study, which we had 297 members of the House. We throw out the word Congress as, Congress consists of two chambers. the House has historically consistently spoken in support of Yucca Mountain.
That's right.
Whether that is, and what's interesting on the legislation to address the Nevada veto, that was a 306 to 117 vote. And you know what the United States Senate did? They voice voted it. They voice voted it. So we're going to hear in the next panel some comments about this isn't a failure of the science or the studies, and I would reject the premise that we have failed. My stated position is this president and this majority leader have failed to comply with the law, and that's why, unfortunately, they've asked you to spend a lot of good time, effort, and energy covering their rear ends on this. And that's unfortunate. I yield back to my friend.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I would just say I'm hopeful that the courts are actually going to rule in favor of enforcing the law, and that the administration's efforts to terminate Yucca will actually be stopped, and that they will require that the Yucca application proceed. So we'll wait for that day. Thank you very much.
The gentlelady yields back her time, and Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kitzinger, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all very much for your work on these issues and for coming in front of us today. I'm glad we're talking about this. This is very important. It may not be on the national radar and the front page of the newspaper every day, but it's extremely important, I think, to the future of energy in this country. The Illinois' 11th district that I represent is the largest nuclear district in the country. We have 3 plants, 6 reactors, and we actually have a home of where there was originally going to be nuclear recycling in Morris, Illinois, which is now a spent fuel storage pool. So we have 4